Everybody, round of applause. All right. Good afternoon. Everybody can hear me all right? I feel a little loud. I'm kind of loud in the first place, so. Thanks for the introduction, but just a little more about me. My name is Matt Newell. Hi, good to meet everybody. You can tweet me at Matthew Newell or at newell.cloud. And I'm a 20-year guy, both a software engineer and an architect. I am an AWS certified solutions architect. I have my sort of day job. I work for a company out of Ann Arbor called SkySync. We do enterprise content migration, getting data from on-prem into the cloud or between one cloud provider and another. I also have my own AWS consulting practice, so this is what I do. This is what I'm thinking about every day. So therefore, I know everything. It's probably not true. Probably not even close. Let me throw a few statistics at you first. So this is from a 2018 survey, so just this year, 92% of all businesses are utilizing public cloud services. Let me just poll the room. So who's building solutions in the cloud today? Okay, yeah, maybe not 92%, pretty close. So, and how many people are whole hog? Everything you do in the cloud. One guy, good. That's my guy over there. So let me tell you how I interpret this number, and I think it really reflects what we're seeing, what we just saw in this audience. Okay, 92%. That's a crazy high number. And what it tells me, and what I see out in the field when I'm talking to customers, is that everybody's dipping their toe in the water. Right? Everybody's like, oh, this new cloud thing. Oh, it's great. We've got to be on the cloud. CIO magazine tells me I need to be in the cloud. Right? So everybody's dipping their toe in the water. But not everybody trusts it. So this is actually a 2017 survey. I couldn't find an updated version of it. But in 2017, 74% of business leaders said that they don't trust the cloud, that they don't think it's secure. And so if you think about the difference between those two numbers, almost 100% of everybody's using the cloud in one way or another, but only 75% trust it. That's a big difference, and is really sort of the genesis of this talk. So we're going to try to just reduce the fear factor a little bit. So we're just going to skip across the waves on a few topics. We'll talk about how public is the public cloud. Talk about some of the differences between doing things on-prem versus infrastructure as a service versus platform as a service versus doing it serverless. Talk about how to get a little control back via encryption. We'll talk about going global with AWS, and we'll talk about cost. So I sort of argued with myself a little bit about how technical to make this talk. You know, it's a security conference. I know the room next door is doing a talk on SMB worms, which is actually a really cool topic. I wish I was over there. But this is not necessarily the most technical talk, the most security-focused talk that you'll probably see this week. But this is why I still think it's important, because operational efficiency is a defense. So let me ask you guys, biggest hack in history. Last year, 150 million social security numbers, driver's licenses. Somebody know which one I'm talking about? I heard it somewhere. Equifax, right? Absolutely. Whoever answered it, do you know what the vulnerability was? You know how they got in? Struts. See, this is my guy over here. What's your name, sir? Jeff, I'm Matt. It's good to meet you. You're my guy. Right, so it was a vulnerability in Apache Struts. It had been patched, or it had been identified, fixed. There was a security advisory 2 months before the attack. Now, say what you want about Equifax as a company. I'm a little in the credit reporting agencies. They may not be the most ethical people in the world, but there's some guy, right? There's some IT guy just like us, or a developer, or a DevOps guy, right? It was his responsibility to patch this. right? At the end of the day, it was somebody's responsibility to patch it, and they didn't do it. Now, because I'm a technical guy, we all are, I don't want to think the worst about this guy. I don't want to think that he's lazy or dumb or just didn't get up that day and patch it. He didn't have time. None of us have enough time. We're always being asked to do more with less. Is there anybody in the room that's like, oh my gosh, I have more resources than I know what to do with. I got sysadmins coming out my ear? No, nobody, okay? So while this talk might be more about operational efficiency than security, operational efficiency is a defense. If you guys will just indulge me for a minute, this is kind of a pet theory of mine, and we'll see if there's some nods that go along with this. It's this word public. You know, when we talk about the public cloud, I hate that we use this word. Okay? Let's just do a quick definition. So when I talk about the public cloud, I'm talking about AWS, Google Cloud Platform, Azure. There's some smaller local players around for sure too. And when we talk about the private cloud, we're talking about on-prem. VMware is kind of the 800-pound gorilla there, but you know, Hyper-V, whatever. There's other players in that space. And I would argue, if I could be king for a day, I would say the private cloud is not the cloud. Then we could just call the public cloud the cloud. But the marketing gods of the world have decided we've got public and private. We need to know this. But I think public that word is part of the problem, because there's a certain connotation that comes with the word public. Okay? Personally, I think of a public park. No walls, no gates, no guards, no locks. This is public, right? And I wouldn't take, you know, if I've got my filing cabinet at home, right? Got all my tax returns in it, got my bank statements, whatever, wouldn't pick it up. Take it to the middle of the public park. This is Central Park, actually. Put it in front of the fountain. Walk away. Right? You don't store important data in public. So is that really what we mean when we talk about the public cloud? I think that's the wrong analogy. I think a better analogy is public storage. Everybody's seen something like this. Somebody in here has probably got a storage unit, or 2 or 3 if you're a hoarder. But here, big difference here, right? We've got walls, we've got doors, probably a fence around the property, might have a security guard, check an ID as you come in. And so if you're talking to, like when I'm talking to somebody who's not real technical, maybe say an executive, you know, I won't use the word public in the conversation at all, because it just goes sideways there. But if you're forced to use the word public, somebody that already knows, feel free to steal my analogy if it works. Hopefully people are like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good analogy, Matt. Or maybe not, this guy looks skeptical. Just give me a hard time. And this is a really good analogy in another way. Okay? When we talk about moving things into the cloud, AWS calls the division of labor between what you're responsible for and what AWS is responsible for. They call this the shared responsibility model. And that's actually exactly what we have with our public storage analogy, right? So Joe's public storage, they're responsible for the walls, the doors, the security guards, right? The fence around the property. Joe provides all of that to you, okay? But we provide the lock. I'm the only one who has the key to that lock. I put that lock on the door. And if someone out here, if you've got a storage unit and I've got a storage unit, I can't get into yours and you can't get into mine. And again, to just harp on the same point, that's the opposite of public. It's private. But this is a shared security model. Some things that I'm responsible for and they're responsible for. Okay. So let's put this into a little bit of more detail, more practice. Got an architectural model here. Everybody's seen one. Everybody's got one. I'll still go through it real quick just so we know we're talking about the same thing. So we've got our facility, right? Base level, work bottom up. We've got our facility. These are key cards, alarms, security guards. We've got our network infrastructure. On top of that, we've got our routers, our switches. Above that, we've got some storage. It might be a storage area network. We've got disks. We've got backplanes. We've got to worry about our hypervisor, right? We've got to make sure that's patched up to date. VMware, Hyper-V, whatever. Operating system, Windows. If you're doing Windows, we've got Patch Tuesdays, right? Everybody's favorite topic. Maybe you're doing Linux. That's good. We've got some database sits on top of the operating system. Might be SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL. Some runtime, .NET, Java, Ruby, Node, whatever. And then on the very tippy top, you've got your application, right? Might be your code, might be some off-the-shelf product that you're using. Architectural model, right? So if we're going to do this on-prem, I'm a new business owner. I've gone out, I've bought a building, started a new business, hired a couple of staff, got to build out a data center. If I'm building out my own data center, which one of these things am I responsible for? This guy right here. All of them. I'm responsible for all of these things. And particularly, if I'm a small business, as I am, not only do I have to handle all of these things, I've got to be expert in all of these things. Listen, I'm a software engineer, I'm not a network engineer. So, Cisco routers, not really my specialty. Am I following all of the best practice guidance? Do I have the time to be an expert in that? I really don't. If you work for a big Fortune 500, or even though, I've seen a lot of bad things there too, but if you work for a really big company, particularly a big tech company, you might have experts in that. And that's great. If you do, good for you. I don't. Most of the businesses that I consult for don't. Not an expert in all of this. Some of these are full careers in and of themselves. So if we think about, okay, we've got this cool cloud thing. Maybe I'm thinking about moving my stuff to the cloud. Well, if we think about the same model, now which of these things do I have to worry about? Okay? Do I have to worry about the facility? Nope. Don't even ever see it. Don't know where it is. Great. Cross that one off. Do I have to worry about the network? Do I have to configure the firmware? Do I have to patch the firmware for the router? Nope. Cross that off my list. I don't even know what brand routers that AWS uses. None of my business. Don't need to worry about it. Do I need to worry about the storage? Do I need to worry about disks and backplanes? Nope. Cross that off the list. Do I need to worry about patching the hypervisor? Nope. Cross that off the list. So just by moving to the cloud, I can cross off half that list. Now I only have to be expert in those top 4 layers. I can focus my efforts. I can take that same amount of time, only 24 hours in a day. I can take that same 24 hours in my day and focus on half as much. Now here's the problem. We're all technology professionals. We're all security professionals, right? So I say this with love, being one myself. We're kind of control freaks, right? Giving that up and saying, ooh, I'm going to trust somebody else to manage this for me. That's a hard thing for us. But what we need to realize is that we already do this kind of thing every day. We're just moving where we draw the line. Who writes their own router firmware? Oh, not even? Oh, no, right? Nobody writes their own router firmware. That's ridiculous, right? We trust Cisco to do that. We trust F5 to do that. We trust Juniper to do that. Right? We're not experts in that. We don't have time for that. So we're already trusting somebody. It's just a question of where we're drawing that line, right? And we have to do this, back to operational efficiency, we have to do this because we're being asked to do more with less, right? Next year, we've got to maintain twice as many servers as we did this year. And how many more staff do you get? None. We've got to move this line, this balance between control and trust. So let's work this a little farther, because we're not done. There's more that we can do here. Let me do a couple more definitions. I know everybody loves definitions, but make sure we're all on the same page. So we got to talk about infrastructure as a service versus platform as a service. Okay? In infrastructure as a service, this is really the building blocks of the cloud. Okay? This is just your base VMs, your base storage. Excuse me. In AWS, this is their Elastic Compute Service, EC2. And S3, their simple storage service, right? And this is sort of most analogous to doing things in your own data center, right? Today, there are very few people building things on bare metal. Everybody's got VMware, whatever. Totally analogous. You can take exactly what you're doing in your data centers today, move it onto EC2. Really, you can do it like you might end up with a different IP address, right? If you had a really simple solution. That might be the only change you need to make. Versus platform as a service is at a little bit of a higher level. Okay, these are sometimes called managed services. Okay, often these, when we think of just, and there are hundreds. AWS is something like 250 services. I'm talking about 2 here, or 4 on this slide. But often, when we think about these, we think about databases or cache, right? So if you've got an on-prem MySQL and you want to move that into a managed service, into platform as a service, you can use Amazon RDS for that. They provide you the database. They manage the database for you. Okay? Or if you've got an on-prem Memcache D, you can move that into AWS Elasticache. Okay? And this is still pretty simple to do, but there can be minor architectural adjustments that have to be made. At the very least, you're going to have to change your connection strings, right? But depending on exactly what your architecture is, certainly it's simpler to do platform, or simpler to do infrastructure as a service, but perhaps some more benefits as if we do platform as a service. Oh, those are mouthfuls. Okay, so we already saw this slide actually, but I just relabeled it. Last time I was a little lazy, I just called it cloud. What I really meant was, this is infrastructure as a service. If we just go with VMs in the cloud, this is what we're responsible for, right? Everything in orange. If we go to platform as a service, we've reduced this even farther. Okay? If we think of the RDS example, a managed SQL database, now I don't have to worry about the operating system that runs on. AWS manages that for me, right? So no more Patch Tuesdays on that server. Yeah, well, doesn't that sound like fun, right? I don't have to worry about the database software itself, right? I don't have to upgrade Postgres from, 9.6 to 10.1 when that happened, right? Amazon does that for me. So now now 6 out of the 8 items on this list, I don't have to worry about them anymore. Do more with less. All right, last one. Serverless. This is sort of an extreme version of platform as a service. And in this use case, your application's code runs directly in the cloud. There is no server involved. Okay? Which is great because that's going to take us to the point where we're only responsible for securing our application code. Okay? In AWS, their service for this is called Lambda. If you're familiar with Azure, Azure actually kind of started from the beginning, very, very early Azure. They were all about serverless. They were really early on this. But there often is a significant re-architecture here. If you're working with third-party applications, you're deploying somebody else's software that you bought off the shelf, there's almost no chance that you're going to be able to use this. Okay? And if you're developing your own solution, but it's legacy and it's already 500,000 lines of code and you didn't sort of have a microservices kind of architecture, you're probably not going to be able to use this. But if you're building out a new solution, if it's early in your development cycle, think about this. Think about this for sure. It's a really hot topic. If you follow anything in the cloud, this is the biggest thing that's happening right now. And it gets us just to that very top, right? We don't worry about anything but our application's code. All of the other security concerns, everywhere else up and down that stack, all of the patches, all of the technical knowledge that I needed for that, somebody else's problem. Okay, but Matt, You already knew this was coming. I'm low on trust. You're asking me to trust AWS all up and down this stack. I'm low on trust. What can I do to get some control back? There's encryption everywhere in AWS. One of the easiest ways, best ways to get control back to AWS and feel confident about having your critical data, PII, whatever, in the cloud, encryption. So there's a bunch of options in S3. We already talked about S3 a little bit. It's Amazon's simple storage service. That's their object level, base level storage service. Gives you 4 different encryption options. 4. 3 on the server side, 1 on the client side. I'm not going to go tremendously deep on these. They're all actually really simple to use. On the server side, S3 managed keys, this is really the simplest one. This is literally a checkbox. If you create a bucket in S3, before you start putting content in it, or after, but preferably before, tick a box, say I want this encrypted. Or if you're using the AWS API, it's a parameter. Set the parameter, say encrypt this. Excellent, that's all it takes. KMS managed keys. This is a little more advanced. Still simple to use, still managed entirely by AWS. This is their key management service. And this is targeted a bit more if you've got compliance concerns. So if you're doing HIPAA, whatever, I'm not even going to go through all the acronyms. You got compliance concerns. You want to know what keys you have, where they are, when they're being used, being able to audit them. KMS managed keys. If you've already got your own key management system and you're really low on trust, you can do a customer provided key. In that case, when you're sending your data into S3, you say, here's my encryption key. Sends it over, encrypts it, writes to the disk. When you want to get it back, you say, here's my decryption key, spits out the unencrypted data. The great thing about all of those options, all happens on the AWS side. You don't expend any more resources for that. You don't need any more compute horsepower to do that. Big advantage there. If you're really, really, really low on trust, you can do the encryption client side. Now, of course, you could do this with anything. I mean, you could just encrypt the file using, you can write your own encryption algorithm or just whatever you've already got baked into your apps. Sorry, don't write your own encryption algorithm. That was a joke. But the AWS SDK also does have an option for that already baked in, which makes it really easy. Everything AES 256. All right. Since we've been spending a lot of time on operational efficiency, I've got to do a quick sidebar, even while we're in here, and talk about the operational aspects of S3. Okay. S3 has 11 nines durability. 999999999, right? What does this mean? You store 100 billion objects, 100 billion files, not lose one. Not lose one bit in it. Okay. It's designed to withstand the loss of 2 data centers simultaneously. Somewhere in the Amazon AWS network, 2 unrelated data centers, burned to the ground. You know how much data you lose? None. Is anybody getting this kind of durability in their own data centers? Anybody want to say I'm getting 11 nines? Feel good about that? No, right? We can't do this ourselves. This would be enormously expensive for us to do ourselves, but AWS does it for us. And it's also infinitely scalable. Whether you've got 10 gigs or 100 terabytes or a petabyte or an exabyte, it's good to go. Quick sidebar, S3, operational efficiency. All right, back to encryption everywhere. EC2, right? We talked about this, the Elastic Compute Service. These are your base level VMs. One-click full disk encryption. Right? As you're creating a VM, tick a box, boom, your disks are encrypted. Data is encrypted at rest and when moving to and from the VM. So as it's moving around Amazon's internal network, data is not decrypted until it hits your VM. Again, AES 256. There's a theme. Encryption everywhere, RDS. We talked about the relational database service, the managed databases. Got a MySQL database, SQL Server, Oracle, Postgres, or Amazon Aurora. Actually, I don't do sales for AWS, I swear. One disk full database encryption. Tick the box, encrypt your data. Data is automatically encrypted at rest. Data in motion, a little bit here kind of does depend on you because all of the providers do it differently, right? SQL Server does it different than Oracle, does it different than MySQL. A lot of it tends to depend on your connection string, but you do have some responsibility there. It won't just magically be encrypted in motion unless your application is properly configured. So just kind of a little gotcha there. And yet again, what is it? AES 256. Okay. When should we use these things? When should we encrypt? Let me ask the room full of security professionals. When should we encrypt? Always. Yes, my people. Encrypt always. Any of you who didn't answer always, that's fine. That's fine. That's why we're here. But just do it always. If you're thinking, oh, it's a test server, it doesn't matter, encrypt it anyways. Get in the habit. Say, oh, but, you know, my architecture and I can't afford the 1% performance hit. Yeah, you can. You totally can. Compute power is cheap these days. Just do it always. Don't make excuses. Get in the habit. Encrypt always. Don't be that guy at Equifax where your data's walking out the back door and you're involved in a big hack. Encrypt always. Am I doing on time? Oh, all right. Okay, let's talk about going global. Glowing global. Practice that one 100 times, I still can't get it right. Going global. Again, this is one of those things where you might go, okay, how is this about security, Matt? What does this have to do with security? Let's come back to this. You guys sick of this model yet? It's the last time, I promise. Let's come back to this model. Has anybody had this happen? This happens to me more than I want to admit. CEO comes down to wherever IT lives. We're usually in the basement, right? Off in a corner. CEO comes down, said, hey guys, we've got to increase revenues by 50% next year, or 100% next year, or 250% next year. Anybody work at a startup? 250% is not, right? That's a conversation I've had. We've got to increase revenues next year. So we're going to Europe. Yay! We've already leased an office. We've hired out our European sales team. So, you know that data center that we've got in the US? Yeah, now we need one. Now we need one in the EU. Well, why can't we just use the one in the US? It's an easy answer. Who knows the answer to this? Why can't we just use our data center in the US? One word. Nobody? Close. Yeah, I was going with compliance, but somebody said GDPR. So, same thing, right? GDPR, compliance. Yeah, if you're storing any customer data. I mean, you could talk to your lawyers about this, whatever, but here's my rule of thumb. If you're storing any customer data, and you've got customers in Europe, don't store it in the US. Okay? So our CEO came, got to increase revenues 100%, got a new European office, go build a data center in it. Oh, great. Where do I start this again? I start this whole thing over. And even worse, 3 years ago, I had a CTO, CIO, whatever the executive in charge of your hardware may be. 3 years ago, I had a CTO, Cisco guy. Cisco's out in the hall. I don't know if anybody's in the room. He's a Cisco guy, right? All of our network stack, all Cisco, right? Okay, well, he quit. And now we've got a new CTO. And now I've got to build up this new data center somewhere in Europe. Well, new guy's a Juniper guy. So not only do I have to rebuild all of this, I have to rebuild it differently because he's not going to let me buy any Cisco hardware. Right? So it was hard enough for me to be an expert. I'm not a network engineer. It's hard enough for me to be an expert in the Cisco equipment that I have here. Now I've got to be an expert in the Juniper equipment in Europe, right? And worse, I'm the senior architect. You know, now I got to jump on a plane and live a month in Berlin or London or wherever while we spin this thing up. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do any of that. That takes me away from spending time on the really hard security problems. So I'm just building out hardware. Okay? So how does AWS solve this problem for us? Well, it's globally homogeneous. Okay? Which is to say, all of the AWS regions behaved the same. Right? Use the same tools. They have the same infrastructure. They have the same patch levels, just to kind of, give that a word, right? They've done all of the same security practices on all of their hardware everywhere in the globe. So if I've embraced the cloud and I've built out my stack in the US, I can take that in minutes. And I can have that same stack in the EU. And then in a couple more minutes, I can have that same stack somewhere in Asia, right? They've got 15 regions all over the world, something like that. Anywhere it needs to be can be there in minutes. Little caveat, I just put mostly on there. As well, it is all homogeneous eventually. All of the new stuff does get rolled out in what they call US East 1. That's their region in Northern Virginia, sort of where everything happens first and then it spreads out. But within, 3 to 6 months, everything that you can get in the US, you can get everywhere else in the world. Here's the easiest slide on here. And the last slide, I think. What does this cost? Nothing. The things that we talked about, the security things, the operational things, they don't cost any extra over what AWS charges you for the base infrastructure. So if you're paying $1 a month for a VM, whatever, that'd be a big VM, but, or, $1 an hour for a VM, be a big VM. If it was $1 a month, it'd be a small VM. Paying $1 a month for a VM. God, I did it again. You should pay $1 an hour for a VM. Third time's the charm. And you enable encryption. What do you pay? Still $1 a month. Can't get away from it. If you've got 100 gigs in S3 and you're paying $20 a month for that, and you encrypt it, you're still just paying $20 a month. So there's no reason not to do this stuff. There's no reason not to do this stuff. There's no reason to be afraid of the cloud. And to not take advantage of all the security features that are there. I've touched, like, if AWS provides this for security, right? All kinds of options. I've touched on, like, this. Okay? Because they really care about it. They get that people have these concerns, right? We go back to that first slide. They get that 75% of people don't trust the cloud. They understand this. So they're just like bucketing in features to say what might people want. So even though I've only covered a little bit today, really the whole point is to encourage you to get out there, look for yourself, right? Just Google AWS security. They have got page upon page upon page upon page. And in most cases, all of the ones I talked about today, but even most cases, they provide all of the security stuff for free because they want you to use it. They want you to get over this hump. Okay, so what do we know now? We know that public isn't public, right? We know that Matt hates the word public. Learn that, if nothing else. We learned that we have better operational efficiency with platform as a service than with infrastructure as a service than over on-prem. We know encryption is good. Hopefully all the security professionals here already knew that encryption was good, but we learned that it's particularly good in this case, right? We learned that we can go global quickly, and we learned that we can do it for zero marginal cost. That's me. Questions. People have questions. Everybody was intent. I didn't get any questions. Yes, sir.
Cloud is so secure, why am I being bombarded every day by security companies wanting to just protect the cloud for me?
Good question. So the question was, if the cloud is so secure, why are security companies asking you every day for your money? Really good question. Simplest answer is because they want your money. But no, I mean, it is a really good question, and I don't mean to make light of it in this presentation. There's still a lot of work to do. I mean, it's no different. Like, we didn't even talk about, for example, intrusion detection, right? This is something that, as a security community, we've said, listen, we're not gonna prevent every attack. So monitoring remediation after the fact are really, really important, right? I didn't talk about that at all. You're still going to want to be doing that whether you're doing it on-prem and in the cloud. And this is, one example of the kind of stuff that these guys are trying to sell you. And it's I thumbs up to them. I mean, there is more than we need to do other than just what I talked about here. Other questions? Yes, sir.
What's the if there's any differences between Amazon, Google, Microsoft, are there any major differences in what they can do or?
Really, really good question. Certainly at the level of detail that we got into here today, I would say I used AWS just because I didn't want to be switched back and forth, and I know AWS well. Everything that we talked about today, all three of the big providers are doing. Absolutely. So if you're an all Microsoft shop and you're like, Azure, cool, use Azure. Do this same stuff in Azure. Absolutely. Other questions? Yes, sir.
What about third parties that are putting your data into the cloud and some compliance checks? Is there just a checklist that you can say, these are the things that you should have implemented? Does Amazon publish something like that?
They do. If you Google AWS compliance, there is a whole page, well, pages upon pages upon pages that talk about compliance. Whether it's easily digestible in a checklist that it would ask a third party, like you're talking about like Box or Dropbox, right? I'm going to use Dropbox. I want to make sure that I know what they're doing with my data.
More like a service that's maybe managing your policies, but they're storing your customer PII in the cloud.
Yeah, I can't think if there's a good checklist. Tweet me, email me. I will send you. I will look and send you a few links and see if any of them stick. Try and be a little help.
It's one thing if I'm doing it.
Right.
It's another thing if I'm asking somebody else and then they're going out and doing it.
Where is it? There it is. But I'm low on trust. I get it. And then those are good questions to be asking. Absolutely. I mean, how am I doing on time? Where's my guy? Am I doing on time? I'm good? I'm good. Okay. In my day job, right, we're migrating content from on-prem into the cloud, right? So we move content, from an SMB share, into Dropbox, right? This is typically what we do. And then 3 years later, we've got to move that data back out, right? We talked about CTO changeover, right? Oh, you get a new CTO. Oh, now we want to do, Office 365, SharePoint Online. So now we've got to move all of our data from Dropbox to Office 365. The reason I bring this up is because people are never thinking about the next step. They're always thinking about, how do I get in the cloud? Okay, great, I'm there. Good. What about the next step? How do I get back out? Do I still own that data? Is that my data? What if it's 100 terabytes? What if I got 100 terabytes in Dropbox? How do I get that back out? People don't think about that enough. So for sure, this kind of goes to your question as well. Do look before you leap. Think 3 years out about what you're going to do. For sure, because you may not be there forever. Good enough?
It's good enough. I'll email you.
Okay, do, please. Other questions? Yes, sir.
So you said that there's so obviously these features are free, right? They're included in your purchase of cloud. But I'm curious about the compute cycles, like you said. So where I work, we have lots of researchers. We have a high performance computing center. And they do a lot of stuff there, and they're paying per cycle.
Yep.
If they're going to, you said it's a rather negligible cost, but if we're talking about, we got to fire up, say, like 1,000 CPUs, run it for a few hours. Is that going to contribute heavily to the compute cost?
Can everybody hear him? Should I be repeating questions? Are you guys okay over here? You all right? Okay. I was getting lazy on that. I should know better. Bad presenter etiquette. So, well, it really depends on how you do it, right? So I think if I'm sort of looking, reading between the lines of what you're saying, and your guys are doing their own thing. If your VMs are doing the encryption, your software running on the VM is doing the encryption, then you're absolutely going to pay for that, right? Whatever runs on your VM, you're going to pay for that, and your sizes of those VMs have to be appropriately sized for that. What I meant was, when AWS does the encryption for you, you don't pay for that, and they've got huge purpose-built servers just for doing that, so that's where it really becomes negligible. Now, it's not zero, though, right? I mean, if you've got, and this is why, that's why architecture isn't easy, right? If you are Netflix, and you have Thank you. If you have a 200-node Cassandra cluster, and microsecond latency matters to what you're doing, right? If you're talking about a few more microseconds, then maybe you need another 50 nodes in your Cassandra cluster. You got to think about it there. I mean, that microsecond latency that it might take Amazon to encrypt something for you, it might matter, but default to doing encryption. Good. Other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate everybody taking the time. Good questions. Hope you enjoyed. Do tweet me, email me, call me. My contact info is in that QR code. If you're old school like I am, I have a stack of business cards. If you want to come up, if anybody had questions that they didn't get answered and would like to ask, feel free. I'll hang around for a while. And everybody enjoy the rest of your conference. Thanks.